Welcome to the Data Career Podcast. Here's your host, Avery Smith.
Welcome back to the Data Career Podcast, everyone. I'm so excited that you're here. We have an awesome episode for you up ahead. It's my interview with Kyle Pastor, a.k.a. DataStuffPlus on Instagram. Go ahead and follow him there. The link is in the show notes. Awesome account to follow. Tons of really cool data visualizations and other data-related posts. I love following DataStuffPlus. So definitely follow them on Instagram, and we also have their Medium down below in the link. Today, we had an interview with Kyle. We did this last week. It was totally awesome. We talked a lot about data science projects, why to do them, why they're fun, how Kyle has found better ways to do them over time. You could definitely check out some of the projects that we talk about. They're listed, like I said, in that Medium down below. So this is an awesome interview. Kyle's one of my best data friends out there on the social media world. So it was super fun to spend time and talk to him. So I'm about to get into the interview, but one thing I do want to say before we get started is I want you guys to download my data science roadmap if you have not already downloaded it. I have the link down below in the show notes. It's totally free. It's a 33-page, can't talk this morning, 33-page PDF. I think you guys are really going to like it. The other thing is this podcast is brought to you, of course, by Data Career Jumpstart, and we have an awesome opportunity coming up. I think, let me check the calendar here. I think it is on February 7th. February 7th, we're going to be starting another round of 21 Days to Data. The first cohort, the January cohort, is about to end. Maybe you've seen the hashtag on LinkedIn, 21 Days to Data. It's been an awesome cohort, an awesome course, awesome challenge. People are really stepping up to the plate and knocking it out of the park. And I want you guys to do the same. So definitely check that out. I have the link to that down below in the show notes as well for you guys to look at. It's $50 and it is 10 hours of data science content plus challenges. So it is a lot of fun and you'll start seeing results pretty quickly. So we'll go ahead and hop into the podcast now with Kyle Pastor. Go ahead and follow him on Medium and Instagram in the show notes down below. And as always, thank you so much for listening to Data Career Podcast. One last thing before we get into the show, and that is I don't know what happened to my audio. It is not my best audio, guys. We recorded this on Instagram. I don't know if it was my AirPods. I don't know what the problem was, but I apologize for the poor audio, but Kyle's audio is crystal clear. So just don't listen to me, listen to him. All right. Enjoy the podcast. I'm excited to have you, Kyle. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Okay. For those who don't know, Kyle and I have been friends on Instagram for when did you start your account?
Oh, I started 4 years ago, but back then it was a really embarrassing blog of me programming at 6 a.m. in fast motion. And then I only started getting back into two years ago, maybe just before the pandemic hit.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I started at the beginning of 2020. So wait, no, what year? Yeah, beginning of 2020. Yeah, that's been 2 years. So anyway, stoked to have you. We'll do a little intro here. So
yeah.
For those who don't know, welcome back to the Data Career Podcast. We are doing a live recording here with Kyle Pastor, and who is DataStuffPlus. Super excited to have him on the program. Thank you guys for tuning in. For those who don't know Kyle, you definitely should know Kyle. So go ahead and I'll have a link to his Medium, his Instagram down below. So go check him out. But Kyle, this is a little bio for Kyle right here. He is first and foremost a guy that doesn't like being bored. And I can agree with that. He enjoys exploring cool new ideas and technology and writing and teaching about whoever wants to listen. He went to McMaster University in Hamilton because we got to say, you are Canadian, correct?
I am Canadian now. I'm in the Toronto area, so there you go.
There you go.
Hey.
And got yeah, I was gonna say nice adding the A.
Got to do it.
Got his master's, then realized he needed to get another job, so he got another master's in quantitative finance from Waterloo, so double master's here. From there, he started to work at a big Canadian bank as a full stack developer and quant. And on the side, Kyle has a bunch of projects, by the way. We'll talk about those today. From a Raspberry Pi based escape room in a box. I don't think I realized that. We'll have to talk about that.
It's called The Box. It's pretty great. So.
Oh my gosh. I could go. We'll get into that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
He also has a Medium account, which you'll find the link down below for this podcast, where he talks about code, tech, talks about all his cool stories. He has a very patient wife and 2 small girls, one that is just 16 months old. So, Dad Kyle, and therefore he's tired all the time. So, Kyle, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me.
That's awesome. You do so many cool things, and I'm so excited to have you be telling your story on this platform because you have so many cool projects, and we'll talk about all those projects, but they're so freaking interesting. I first want to get back into your just like how you got to data in the first place, right? You started studying physics, correct?
Yeah. I was doing physics for like all undergrad and like my master's program as well. Yeah.
Okay. Why physics?
Oh man, I was like really into it as a kid. Like I just like the idea of physics. It was like because it's hard. I was like, I really want to do it because it's impressive. That's how it started off. And then like in the end, it's like applicable to a bunch of stuff. So it was a good call because like you can apply it like in so many different places. And primarily like the one thing I got into was like coding pretty early on. So like when I was in high school, I started looking at like Linux and like just like basic web stuff and like Flash development and all this stuff. So I got really into it, and then basically from there, I just applied it in physics. And then I took a bunch of like computing courses during like masters and like undergrad and stuff. And then, and then I got to like I did like a computational physics master's, which was like very cool. But like, I was like, okay, what do I do now? So either I can go for a PhD, which I was like really into academia for a while until like the end of my master's. I was like, maybe not that. But then all the guys I knew that like graduated, they're going like into finance and stuff. So I was talking to them and they seemed very happy and they had like nice clothes. I was like, this seems cool. So like after I've had a few chats with them, they convinced me to apply to this like second like master's program. And then, they're like the rest is history. Like it was a lot of like co-op and then some finance courses here and there, but mostly like the coding like brought it home. And then like from the coding, like in order to do anything cool, you need data, right? So that's sort of where that came from.
That might be a little subjective because you could have gone and been like a software developer, right? I mean, you did do that, I guess, too, kind of, right?
Yeah, that's kind of like what I do now. But like, you can like use algorithms and stuff, but like you're generally always going to need like some form of data as like input and then to test against and things like that. So like, I guess that's like the data connection. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I guess in your secondary, well, I guess as an undergrad, what languages were you using? Like what'd you know?
Oh, I was like a keener, so I did like C++, which was like a really bad idea because like it was like I always say it's like one of the more challenging ones because there's lots of like details about like garbage collection and memory and all this stuff. But like it was hard, so I was like, oh, I gotta like do this because it's hard. And then I did like a little C#, the classic like HTML stuff. And then I had to do Fortran 90, which was like really old school, but like, so I tell like my older colleagues and they're like, whoa, you remember Fortran 90? That's crazy. I'm like, yeah, had to do it. But like, and then I started dipping into Python like later on. And then Python's like, obviously that's the way to go for me, but.
I'm with you. I'm also team Python, but you were using C++ in your physics undergrad?
Yeah, like to build like all the like for my not my dissertation, like my thesis and stuff, and like we had like undergraduate thesis and all this. So like I was like into C++, and then I did like a co-op in undergrad. So I worked for the Canadian Department of Defense for like 8 months. So I moved over like across the country. I went to the military base and stuff, and started like working with them and like coding stuff. And like all their software was C++ too. So that's kind of like why I got that role. And then but it was like it's difficult. And it's good for building, I guess, like fast, lower level software, but like to just do fun stuff, it's not really where you want to go. At least I think so.
Kind of a pain in the butt to get anywhere fun. But that's so interesting because when I think of like a physics undergrad, I think less about learning C++ and more like you take like the ball on this side and the ball on this side and clink them together, or like you do like kinetic energy and potential energy. I mean, that was physics 1, I guess. And then at least in the US. And then physics 2, this is as far as I got in physics, was, you cover like electricity and magnetism and currents and stuff like that. And then maybe like you take like a quantum class. That's how I see physics.
Yeah.
But you were actually like coding a decent amount.
Yeah, like there's some coding stuff. So like when you talk about quantum physics stuff, right? What it gets into is
Yeah.
like you can't problems that can't be solved like just by like writing the math out sometimes. So you have to like use like numerical techniques to like solve problems, and then you have to like use like code. Oh yeah, like Matlab was another big one that he used, right? So in order to
I
like
was waiting for
solve
that
like
one.
this is getting too deep into it, but like in order to solve like certain like differential equations and like all this other stuff, you have to use code at some point. So like it does just necessarily become like something you need to do. And like once you get to, like yeah, in the master's program, it's like you don't find many people doing pure like theory where it's just like pen paper just writing stuff down. It almost always comes down to like you have to do some form of calculation or something, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's
Yeah.
actually interesting
But
now
we
that I'm
did clink
thinking
balls
about it.
together. That was good. We did the clink it, so it's good.
Okay, so you still know how to do that? Just go.
Yeah, yeah. It takes practice, but I got there.
That's awesome. I'm actually thinking about it. You're the second. I probably interviewed. I don't know. I think this will be episode 35 or
Oh
36.
wow. Nice.
And I've probably interviewed probably like half those are interviews. So let's say 15 people. And you're
Hmm.
actually the second physics major, and Emily Vu was the first one. And she's also, I guess she's a product manager, but also gone to analytics. So you
Hmm.
physics people, I've always known you guys are smart, but it turns out you can transition pretty easily to, the data field or the tech field pretty easily.
Yeah, yeah, and like especially for finance too, like a lot of the times they do look at like physics background. So yeah, it was pretty good, easy to find a job, I guess, because like people hiring are looking for that kind of thing. And then yeah, like since you have like physics is like more of like a general knowledge of things, I guess is the way I'd put it. And then you can apply the lessons to like different pieces, right? So you learn how to solve problems primarily in like with the physics undergrad. So that becomes like valuable later, right? You don't have like as specific a skill set, but you have a pretty like solid general one.
Yeah, and I mean, I think
Hmm.
at the end of the day, that's all we really get from college at most places is you learn how to learn, and then you learn how to do your job actually when you're at the job.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so that makes sense. So tell me a little bit more about what you do now. You work for a bank, is that correct?
Yeah, so I work for it's called Scotiabank. It's like a one of the big. There's like five huge banks in Canada. And it's one of the like top five or whatever. And yeah, like I do a lot of like it's mostly programming in Matlab and Python. So what we do is like it's like man, every time I explain this, it's like it's very boring, I guess, because like finance stuff is gonna be boring. We simulate stuff, which is cool. So we
Okay.
simulate what if the markets go crazy and like what if like interest rates change and what happens if people start pulling their money out of banks and all that stuff, right? So like we try to forecast what happens if that happens and see like if we're in trouble or not or how much money we'll gain or lose and all this kind of stuff, right? And then to like support that, we like obviously have to build tools. So we build the simulation software, but also have to like it's like cool you have simulation software, but like what do you do with it? So we help to build like I do web-based tools basically. So we build like a full stack. So we have like the data and then we have an API that calls the methods that we build, and then we have like a front like I use React.js, so just like a web interface. So people like the traders or like management can like go into a website, just click around, run like a simulation, and see like what the impact is. So that's
Oh,
like how it all ties in, right?
that's really cool. So you're basically creating, web apps for your organization for non-coders, non-data scientists, even tech people to be able
Hmm.
to click and drag and click buttons to run complex simulations and see what the end result would be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because like a lot of the people like they're more like there's not as many coders in our department, I guess. Like we're the main like team that like does the like coding analytics stuff. But like a lot of people know exactly what they need from the software. So being able to like build an interface where they can either upload files that have like, for example, like what are the markets going to do in the next like 3 years, or they can say I want to tweak how like certain parameters of the model and just run it. Like that's like super important because otherwise we have to do it, and I don't want to do that. So the more like I make it easier for them, the less like work I have to do. So it's always good.
That's true. That's true. So this is interesting because when I was at Exxon, we did something pretty similar where you're trying to see if prices change, what's your margins and stuff like that.
Hmm.
One issue we ran into was simulations are not always easy computational tasks.
Hmm.
And specifically when you like are like I say you're like a CEO or I don't know, a trader or something like that, and you want to tweak, a couple parameters and then you want to see the result, it could take like an hour or 2 hours
Oh
for
yeah.
that to come through. Do you guys solve that or you just have to say, hey, you got to wait?
So like it depends. So in specific cases, it's like you're kind of screwed. You just have to like rerun effectively. But we do this nice little thing I call like the basis function. So like I don't know, like like PCA type stuff. Like if
Yeah.
you can sort of say like, well, if $1 is equal to if you put $1 in, you get $2 out. If you put $2 in, you get $4 out, right? So like
Gotcha.
it's sort of like you can scale it up. So one thing we do is like we can run like let's say like the $1 version for like I don't know like 1A, 1B, 1C for like $1, and we can say what is the impact of changing each one. And the whole idea is that like that is like our basis, so you can use like that to like try to find another thing. So you can say if A goes up by 1 and B goes up by 2, instead of having to resimulate that, you can just say, well, I know how to just like calculate it right away because I know it just like scales with each other, right? So it's just like you're
Gotcha.
scaling stuff together. So like it takes a lot of like pre-processing because you have to run like basically every possible combination for like the basis. But then once you have it, you don't have to calculate anything because you have everything ready to go. You just have to sort of like multiply stuff together and you get like the new result. And as long as you've tested it and it's like legit, then people are pretty happy, even if it's like a little bit inaccurate. So yeah, so there's a lot of that going down.
That's really interesting because we did something pretty similar at Exxon where you basically can make some approximations to, which is really interesting because if you think about it, this sometimes you go onto Kaggle. We'll talk more about Kaggle in a little bit, but you go into Kaggle and people are so concerned about the extra 1% accuracy in their machine learning model. And they're like, look, like your model was 90% and mine's 91. And it's like, okay, great. That 1% actually doesn't matter. In fact, in your case, it's more important to give them a quick answer than the most accurate answer.
Yeah, exactly. Because like in a real setting, like if the number's off by like, oh no, like it's off by like $1,000 or something like that on like $1 billion, nobody's gonna care. If it's off by $1 million over $1 billion, no one's gonna care either. But like if it takes an extra day, then like it's not gonna be worth it because whoever the person is just gonna not want your results anymore because either someone else gave them a hand calc, which is like close enough, and they're happy, or they just probably moved on at that point. So like yeah, like the accuracy, yeah, like you can't get too into the weeds about how accurate things are as long as like you're in the ballpark usually. So
Yeah, that's so interesting. I just think that's fascinating. They don't teach you that really in
no,
school.
no, it's like it has to be so right. I'm like, no, it doesn't at all. Just like get it close enough.
Yeah, exactly. So interesting. Okay, so that's a little bit about what you do now, a little bit how you got into data. Let's talk a little bit about your Instagram. So you're at DataStuffPlus.
Mm-hmm.
Tell for those who don't know, we have 20 people watching live. We have a lot of people listening on the podcast. For those who don't know and aren't familiar with DataStuffPlus, describe DataStuffPlus.
DataStuffPlus is a visual experience first and foremost. No, basically it's like it started off as a blog, like a video blog kind of thing for me to sort of make myself accountable to like do projects. Because like one thing I think is pretty shared with everyone, I have a lot of ideas and usually I start off on them and it's like, oh, like this, I'm so into like this specific idea. And then 1 week later, I'm like, wait a minute, what about this other idea that's really cool? And then the first idea is now dead in the water. So I never do it again, which is cool, which I'll just talk about later. But the idea was like, well, if I'm committing myself to sort of doing this like little Instagram account where I just like sort of film myself in like stop motion, basically coding, then maybe like it'll keep me going, right? It's like when you have like a gym buddy or whatever. And then like I thought back all the times I would watch random guys coding in their basement, and I'm like, I don't watch that at all. So why would anyone else? So I basically dropped the account for a while, and then I basically reprised it. And I think it was because I was seeing like lots of like really interesting graphics on like various just like other Instagram accounts. I was like, these are like really cool. Like for example, 538, they have some really good things. Bloomberg has like some really cool Statista as well. And I was like kind of interested, like I like looking at these, which means other people like looking at these. And also, it was like, how do you make these things? Like, how do you make them look so good? So I think the first thing I was trying to do was build some graphics that were actually look decent. So I actually messaged, I think, the people like running the Instagram account for 538 asking like what they use. And then I realized it's like, oh, you basically make a basic chart and then you edit everything in like Photoshop, basically. So then once I started doing that, I started like making some small like plots. Like it's just like sort of Google trend plots of like, when did D&D get popular again? The answer is always. But anyways, and then like the rise of VR and like are Canadians giving their dogs CBD and marijuana and stuff, like all that kind of like interesting stuff. And then it's like it was good. and I liked it. But obviously it's like a lot of work to do that all the time because like it does take effort. And
So
then
much effort.
a lot of effort, and like I was like it was like cool or whatever, but I didn't have the time obviously to like do it all the time, like every day or anything. And one thing I learned is like if you want to grow followers, you basically have to post once or twice a day, effectively. It's like a big like once I start doing that, like things start really growing. And then I was like, wait a minute, I can just repost other people's stuff, and it's a lot easier. But as long as I attribute it and make sure everything's cool, like I always try to make sure that like if I post something, if they're like Bloomberg or whatever, I just repost it and like give credit. But if they're smaller, sometimes I'll reach out and make sure that, like they're cool with me like reposting their stuff. And then now you have like a sort of a depth of content, and I sort of started like thinking about Instagram as like a mobile game where all you sort of do is you sort of have to find these images, post them, and then you reward it with followers and validation to your person as a person. So, that was pretty good. Yeah, and then from then, like honestly, like once, like yeah, to grow the account, I just like followed people and they followed me back, and I would chat with people, and like the whole adage of like, oh, you have to really engage with your followers is like pretty true, especially at the beginning, where like you have to really sort of chat, comment, like do some DMs, things like that. And then I think it posted this thing from like either Indian Pixels or some other, like I think it was Indian Pixels, this one image I think of like the size of statues. And I don't know why, but it blew up in India. Like it got like huge, and I got like 10,000 followers from like that one thing. And then from that point on, like once I got to that level, like every day you just start getting like, as long as you're posting every day, you just keep getting more and more followers type thing. But now it's just sort of like a fun little like side project that, keep people informed, make sure things look good. It's great.
Yeah, I know I really enjoy it. Basically, you can log on to DataStuffPlus and you'll see a different image, a different data visualization, every day, and you can get a feel and get inspired and see how other people create and how they display stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it's really fun. And for those listening who want to grow a social media account, I hope you were taking notes. I think Kyle and I, maybe close when we started 2 years ago, had pretty close to the same number of followers. And obviously Kyle's at 70K and I'm like at 2K. So listen to Kyle, watch what Kyle does, and then that's how you grow.
Yeah, the difference is like you have like quote unquote like real content. It's easy to repost stuff, right? So like yeah.
No, but I think that is something that I think that content creators who are successful, I think a lot of the times they're more curators than they are actual creators, because creating takes so much effort.
Yeah.
So, especially in data. Gosh, you want to build data visualization, you have to find the data, clean the data, make the data visualization, and then like you said, like if you want to make it look really good, clean it up in Photoshop or something.
Yeah, and then also like if you don't want people to be angry, the data has to be like it has to make sense and look good. It's another layer. So like also like for the Instagram account, if you want to like look at nice images, you can look at it. But if you want to get mad, you could look at the comment section usually, because there's usually a lot of like there's a lot of vitriol in there, which is great. Lots of people engaged, but
that's true.
But
the people love to troll in
oh my goodness.
That is so
it's wonderful. I get troll DMs and like they're just so good. Like I love it. Like I just yeah, it's pretty great.
Okay, well that's good. I guess out of all of that stuff that you've been doing, you've been posting, is there any visualization, like a chart or a graph or a specific visualization that you like the most that really sticks out to you?
That's a good one, actually. My most like recent one was really cool is I think it was a Bloomberg opinion thing I posted a few days ago, and it's showing like sort of cases and the expected case like volatility. So you have sort of this like line and you have like a band around the line. But the way they did is because cases are going up, and it's obviously based on like the time of year, like dates. They made it so like in polar coordinates, so like to start off in the middle, and it starts like a spiral. And like I've never seen. I mean, it only works out because cases are rising. So once case starts to drop, it's going to look messy. But I haven't never seen like a banded like chart in the same way on a polar axis, which is like really neat. So like when I posted that, I was posting it mostly for that one actual like image. So that was pretty cool. I think generally like the ones that look really good are like the chloropleth maps. Like so if you look at here's like the most like all the like highlighting the counties that have the best like partying or whatever, and you'll see like a really colorful map that like looks visually cool, and a lot of people like respond to it, right? Which the information content might not be as useful sometimes, but like visually it usually looks really cool. So I like those ones a lot. And yeah, like those are the best, I think. Like they're pretty neat.
I think both things you said are actually pretty interesting, because I know the graph you're talking about. I'll put it in the show notes for those who are listening or watching on YouTube, so you guys can look at it. But actually, someone posted about it on LinkedIn. I think it was on LinkedIn, and said this is the worst graph I've ever seen. And I didn't really look at it. I mean, I saw that it was COVID, and I saw that it was, a spiral, basically almost like a spiral line chart.
Yeah.
And I didn't really look at it that closely. And I thought, okay, well, why didn't they just show a line chart? But you're right. It's like they were trying to show seasonality within the COVID time frame, because December, January, February, March, or not March maybe, but like the winter time in the United States, or I guess North America, is when we've had a lot of COVID cases. So they were trying to show seasonality with the long-term effects too, like the trends, I guess is what that's called. That's the first thing. Is I think I saw someone call it the worst visualization I've ever seen, and now I understand it. Now that you actually mentioned it, so that's the first thing. And then the second thing, the chloroplast. I can never say that word. Chloroplast.
I know, same.
Which is basically a colored map, for those who haven't seen that before. Those are so relatable. You can go to like, oh, that's my state. That's how. Oh, that's so true. So yeah, I think those are really relatable, and people really enjoy those. So I agree with you. Okay, let's transition a little bit here to your project. So like you said, you started your account to hold yourself accountable to doing some projects. You have a lot of really fun Medium. Definitely check that out in the show notes below when you're listening. You've done a lot of data projects. You've done a cool one about showing like the impact of global warming, kind of, right? And like how much percent of a city would be underwater if like the temperature
that one,
that's one. You've done one on hockey that was really cool, of like making hockey
like shot heat maps and goal heat maps, things like that.
Yeah, they're almost like sports cards though. Like they're like specific. They're really cool. I really like those.
Gotta make those NFTs or something. It'll be good.
Yeah, that is true. That's how we make our millions, man, right there.
Yeah.
And you've also made a lot of other maps. So do you have first off, I guess, why are you making these projects?
Mostly it's because like I find a data set or an API that's like kind of interesting, and I'm like, what would be cool? So for example, the hockey one, right? Like a lot of my friends are into hockey, and like honestly, like I don't watch too many sports. I'm trying though, so it's almost like an attempt for me to like get into sports using the data. And I'll tell you right now, it did fail, but the graphic looks cool. So yeah, like the NHL has this like open API, so it's not like promoted or anything. But if you go to like the NHL.com and you look for how they pull their data, so I actually wrote an article about like web scraping like a few days ago, and one of the main things is like you can scrape for data on a website, but if you look at the like if you can inspect into the website, you look at sort of you can see like what network pulls it's doing. You can actually see like, oh, there's something it's referring to called like api.nhl.ca or whatever .com. And if you look at that, the question is like, well, what does it do? It's providing all the data to the website, that like the NHL website, right? With all the player stats and all the stuff. And like you have game summaries, like, oh, like so-and-so scored a goal at this time from this point on the ice, right? So you start exploring it. And I was like, this is really neat because it actually has like, I didn't think they ever had this, but for every shot and every goal and every like block and hit and stuff like that in the NHL, for every game, they have a timestamped, like a game timestamp and the location. So you can say at this time of the game, this player took a shot from this location and they scored or they missed or they got like blocked or something like that, right? And I was like, it's such like a rich data set, and I have not seen like I've seen stuff for soccer that like looks at sort of where player positions are. I was like, this is like very cool. So I started playing with the data set, and then I guess the difference is like when you look at the data, it's like kind of messy because it's like a lot of like dots everywhere, right? And like it's not super useful because unless you make sort of a heat map of some sort, it doesn't really give you like useful information. You see like basically just a bunch of random dots. And then I was like, oh, like the standard thing you do if you have a bunch of samples is you can bin them into like discrete bins, and you sort of say, well, there's more shots in this location versus this location. And then you get an idea of like what player is shooting from where are they succeeding, how often do they score goals, things like that. And then I was like, oh, what would look even cooler is a hex bin, which I couldn't find like as a standard like part of like I don't know, like a package really, right? Easily at least. So the main thing I want to do was like build a like set of code in Python using like a package like called Matlab, which is like sort of you can do a lot of things. You can like draw like lines in it, so it's kind of like primitive. But like built a little thing that sort of like makes like a hex plot. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Now what can I do with it? So like I kind of like build like little tools that I can use later to like do other like data projects, right? So this is like one of them is the hex plotting. So yeah, I just applied it to like all these shots, and then I was like, this is like pretty neat. Then like, what's missing here? I'm like, oh, there's no rink, so there's no context for where the shots are. So I went to Photoshop, built like a little rink, then copied and pasted the image on that, and then add the like player tokens and stuff. So it's like a fun little project. Yeah, so like that was like I guess the whole thing is like either I want to try a new graphic, I want to try a new set of data to see what I can do with it, or I want to build like a simple tool that I feel like missing in like the ecosystem usually, and that's where everything gets driven.
I think that's so cool, and it's so interesting that NHL data is just like open source because, I mean, you can it's hard to get that data for other sports,
Yeah.
and I think it was probably hard to get the data for the NHL as well.
It wasn't paywalled at least, like you didn't have to sign up for like a key and all this stuff, which is great.
Yeah, and I don't know if I did this right, but I did a similar project for basketball, and I had to web scrape ESPN, and you have to like set a sleep timer for like 5 seconds between web scrapes because you don't want to get caught for being a robot, because you're not a robot, quote unquote.
Exactly. I'm a human.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, and I'm just scrolling through your Medium right now, and you have so many cool projects. So many cool projects. One thing I want to talk about though, is you actually kind of mentioned it right there, was you had this idea, you want to plot, hockey shots, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna bin them instead of just having them be a scatter. So I'm gonna hex bin because hex bin's rad. The one thing you said was, oh, but this could be useful for other projects. And I want to pause there for a moment, because that is what makes Kyle awesome, and it is what makes me very not awesome, is that thought process of, oh, you know what, I might do this in the future, so let's make clean, structured code that's reusable and modular and could be used in the future. So what other tricks have you learned that makes like a good project, and also tricks that you've learned to keep your project going? Because you work full time, so you might work on a project for a Saturday or whatever, and then you come back 3 Saturdays later, and how do you keep it fresh?
Yeah. Hello, Dinisha. Sabsa? Hey. Anyways, yeah, for the podcast, someone just said hi in the chat. Yeah, so like earlier when I was doing stuff, I would always like write a bunch of code, and then I would have my computer, and then like honestly, I would just get like distracted with something else. Either there's like another project, like or a cool idea, or like I'll start reading a book randomly for the first time forever, and just like totally just forget about what I was doing. And then like a month later, I'm like, oh yeah, I had that like really cool project going on. Like I should get back into it. And then like I literally would go on my computer and would not be able to find any of the files I had because I like named them weirdly. And like I don't remember making like project WT5. I'm like, what does that even mean, right? So one thing I started doing is I always assume that I'm going to get distracted later, and I'm going to end up just like totally forgetting about what I'm doing, but also assume that I'll get into it again later. Like there's some sort of reciprocity. So like assuming I'll forget something, and then in a month from now, I want to do it again, and basically build slower and more thoughtfully at the beginning. So I can actually go back and look at the project and be able to pick up right where I left off, right? So like the first thing I started doing was using GitHub. So for you, those that don't know, GitHub is like, it's called like a code repository. And the idea is that I write code on my computer, and then I commit it to this repository, which is like online, and it keeps track of every change in every file that's ever been done. So it's sort of like saving, right? But you can go at any point, you can sort of pull it back from the website and then continue working on it, which is one thing. Because then you can, instead of say your computer dies, or like you switch up, I don't know, like I'm using Linux and you go back to Windows, so on and so forth, you can just always pull your code back, and then you can continue where you left off, which is a good thing. So that's like the main thing. So you always know where your code is, which is surprisingly difficult to know after like a month. And then another thing is like, I would always try to build like a lot really fast, and then I would get back to it and have no idea what I was doing, because like there's so much spaghetti code that like I have no comments, I have no idea what's going on. So I started trying to document things a lot more. So even like, for the example, the Medium account, like some of these articles are specifically documentation for me to go back to. So if I ever want to do something like this again, instead of having to like rip through my own code and look at it, I actually have like a nicely formatted step-by-step how-to of like how to get roughly to where I was. So doing things like that, it makes it so like you're building stuff really slow. So to be like, it might not be as like sexy because you don't get as much done, you don't get a final result as easy. But thinking long term, you come back a month later and you can actually say, oh, I know exactly what I was working on because I left myself notes. I can look at this mini article I made to like get back into the idea of like what I was trying to look at with it. And then I know where my code is. So now I can actually go and continue my project without like smashing my head against the wall type thing, right? So like, yeah, as long as you're always building stuff, assuming you're going to drop it within a week and have to come back to it a month later, then it actually makes it so I'll finish the project maybe one day in the future instead of just like, having a big laundry list of things that I thought were cool and then they never happened.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I think posting to Medium, there's so many good reasons to be posting projects to Medium. Like you said, one, it forces you to write cleanly and like coherently your code, and I guess the quote unquote value of that you're bringing and the process.
Yeah.
Two, it's like a great resource for you to look back on in the future and be like, okay, that's how I did that. Three, it's a great portfolio. It's a great place to host a portfolio, to send recruiters, to send employers, hey, look at all these interesting projects that I've worked on. And four, you get paid. You can get paid on Medium, and you don't have to sell anything. You just have to post on Medium, and you'll get a little chunk in the mail.
Yeah. In the PayPal or whatever. I don't mean to brag, but I make literally maybe tens of dollars a month, so it's kind of a big deal, right? So just keep that in mind. But it is cool. Like another thing is like you mentioned all the good things about it. Another thing is that also other people are gonna people are thankful when you make something and make it coherent. Like a big one of the this is like random, but like one of my biggest articles that has the most views is like how to deploy a Flask API on Windows, and it's such a generic thing that like everyone's looking for it, but it's such a pain to do. And then I'm like, I found a way to do it because I had to sort of figure out how to do it for work and like all this other stuff. And like, I hope no one else has to do this at all again because it's so annoying. So I wrote an article about it, right? And it actually like people message me like, oh, like this is making my life so much easier. Like this is something that I always like have a problem with. So it feels good. And also there's like, if you're developing a project that like, say you're developing like my own, like, I don't know, like the Hexbin project or whatever. It's also like a nice way to have something out there that you can always point to and say, oh, I made this, right? Because usually when you make code, it sits in a repository somewhere. It's like you make the best code in the world and it produces an image, right? And it's like a really cool image. You post it once and it's good to go. Like no one's ever going to find that code again. And the value of actually like building something at that level, even if it's like the most well-engineered thing, it's just gone because it's a ghost. Like no one uses it. It exists on a repository somewhere, but having an article that references it makes it so it's actually like accessible and attainable by other people. So it makes it less lonely, I guess, to code projects in a weird way.
You're so right. I think sometimes I'll do like whole project tutorials from a Medium article, right? And like it teaches me so much. When I get stuck coding, you either are using Stack Overflow or you're probably using a Medium article. So yeah, thank you for writing the Flask one. Actually, ironically, right before this call, I'm like a TA basically for an MIT data engineering bootcamp. And I was literally just doing Flask application deployment.
Oh,
so,
baby.
Might need to check that Medium article right there. I think
there you go.
Useful.
The answer is use Linux. That's basically what the answer is. Don't use Windows.
Okay.
Well,
I'm on
if
Windows.
you can, yeah. Oh well, you'll get there. That's good. There are ways. So
one thing I did want to mention is I used to when I was younger, I used to be like, how do we move forward as a society? How do we all of a sudden it's 2022, I guess, and we're landing rockets back from space back on Earth. What the heck? How did we get here? And I think one thing that's finally clicked is Elon Musk a genius? And the answer is probably yes. But he's only as good as he is today because someone documented their work, 3 years ago, and that person before was building on someone who built 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And it's we just constantly are adding 1% increments on top of each other. I think that's especially true with code. Everything's just stacked on top of each other so much that it makes it easier to innovate. I don't have to, if I want to make, for instance, a new data visualization library, I don't have to like start an assembly language with the zeros and ones and build up from the scratch. I can build on the other people before me. So you're adding to society. So thank you for your contributions.
You're welcome. You may praise me.
We're repaying you with like 1 cent per view, basically. On
exactly.
Your Medium article. So don't spend it all in one place, all right?
I don't intend to.
Okay, cool. I think we covered projects pretty well. I did want to ask favorite data tools. What you mentioned React.js earlier, right?
Yeah.
That's one that I actually don't see a ton of data people using because we're kind of too bad at coding to use, but it's very powerful. But you software engineers kind of have a better grasp on it, I feel like. But you live and die by the React.js?
The React.js is like, it's better for like web stuff, right? So like, so my stack I usually use is like, what would it be? I guess like, you can SQL database, MySQL, whatever, or like if you just need a file store like S3 or whatever you need, right, to store data. And then usually I like to build like a Python, like a Flask API, which is there to basically either do calculations or serve data. And then the front end is usually where I use like the React. Because like, so like all React is, for those that don't know, is like if you ever looked at HTML code, so if you go into your browser right now and you right click and you go inspect element, you're going to see a lot of like code, it looks like. And all it really is like, it's like a structure, and it tells you like, okay, this is the page, and in that page there's like 20 different lines, and in each line there's like a bold letter or something like this, right? So it's sort of just structured, and that's the browser takes that code and then it sort of renders it, so it knows how to sort of take the code and make it visual, right? And what you can do is you can just write that HTML code out from scratch, but the problem is like there's a lot of lines, it's very verbose, like it's hard to reuse stuff if you're doing it that way. So React.js is kind of like, think of it as like a language or tool that's built on top. And the idea is that you can write things a lot more cleanly, and then it builds it when you compile it or you run your React code. What it's doing is it's spitting out just a normal standard HTML website that you would normally see. But the idea is that if you can reuse things, like for example, like, I don't know, if you go to like there's a button or whatever, right? And you want the button to look like a very specific way. If you're in HTML, you just gotta like copy and paste that button a million times, right? But and then you have to make sure, like it floats to the left and it's this wide or whatever. But in reality, it's the same button. So you would just want like one class or function that would define what a button is, and you just want to say repeat it. So that's kind of what React.js can help you do. So it helps you build websites like a lot easier. Also, they have like packages and stuff, so like you really don't have to write any code yourself, which is like the most important thing in programming, is that you should never be writing code. You should usually be copying and pasting code for the most part and then editing it, which is the way to go. But yeah, for like data tools though, like the classic, like NumPy, you got data frames, like all the Python stuff. I've never used R, but I hear good things. And then I use Matlab a lot, and Matlab's like one of those things that like people use in university and then they like never touch ever again, which is like basically what I did, except when I got my like job at the bank, like we used Matlab, and I realized Matlab is more powerful than people give it credit for the most part. So we do a lot of like data manipulation, and like because you put stuff into like matrices and all this like mathy stuff, so we do a lot of like mathy things there, so it's useful for that. But Python can do the same thing, honestly. It's sort of
I was gonna ask though, because that Matlab doesn't do production that well, correct? Or am I wrong?
Well, for the Matlab people listening, I'm sorry, but like, so Matlab actually does have
there's no Matlab people listening, Kyle. There's no.
Honestly, it's like literally me. That's the only Matlab person. Yeah. Exactly. I did a Matlab conference, and like I showed some of the stuff I built, and it was just like the three people were like, "That's wonderful." I'm like, "Thank you, Greg, Tom, and Patricia. It's great." So like they do have actually like production tools. So they've been really building out like the ability to have like a production API server or whatever. But again, the problem is like this is okay for like if you're a company or whatever and you're willing to pay like tens of thousands a year or whatever to have it. It's hard because like Matlab costs money. And if you want to get like the packages that are good for like deployments and stuff, it costs like more money, right? So honestly, the biggest critique of Matlab is like it costs money. The upshot is their support's like incredible. Like you email them and immediately they'll get like, okay, our development team's on the line. Like, what do you need? Okay, you want to like we have this new update coming up. Here's an NDA. If you sign it, we'll give you all the information. So like they're really good that way. But yeah, it's sort of it's not as easy for production. And to be honest, what I ended up doing was you can do something called compiling Matlab. So you can compile into like an exe, like an executable, and then I wrote my own distributed computing network, like cluster amongst all machines that will run these like exes in parallel. So instead of having to like host these like production machines, I just have it so each machine has the executable file, and I made like it's almost like a botnet that just like executes them when I want to run stuff, right? Which is a fun project, but yeah.
Man, can we contact Matlab? I think they need to sponsor this episode. I think we already sponsored it for them.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, we already said everything that they wanted to hear. So nice
exactly.
Nice plug. Matlab, if you're listening, you can go ahead and send me a PayPal little.
exactly.
Little, and you can say, so I tried so hard when I was in college to work for Matlab. So hard. Tried so hard. I loved Matlab in college, and they never emailed me back. So
you got to blame Cleve Moeller, the creator of Matlab. So right, damn you, Cleve.
Yeah, I'm mad at him. Okay, sweet. The other thing that was really interesting. Thanks for mentioning your favorite tools. The other thing I just wanted to mention was what do you like to do outside of data?
Oh, what is outside of data is the real question, right?
Oh,
data's everywhere.
Yeah, that is true, and you do a great job of your outside passions to somehow technology, programming, and data. I was looking at your Medium. You had like a VR thing that you did, right?
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. So I like VR, which is cool. Like my brother when he was visiting one day, he brought like an Oculus Quest like a year or two ago. And like the Oculus Quest, if people don't know, it's like, well, it's actually right here. So if Oculus, you're listening, hit me up. Well, it's Facebook or Meta now, but anyways. So like it was very cool. So like I bought one basically, and I was like, I put it on. I'm like, this is like awesome. You can like move around in full, like you can go under tables, you can lay down on the ground. It's like really, really cool. And I'm like, oh, I want to make like a puzzle game or something like this, right? So yeah, that kind of bled into like I made like a just like it's like an article on like how to like make hands in VR or whatever. But really like VR is super fun. Like me and my brother play table tennis, which is pretty good, and just chat. He's in Vancouver, which is like on the other side of the country, so the ping is pretty bad, but it still works out. I also like I do running, and I got into biking recently because it's winter over here, and like the winters can be brutal. So it can be like it goes like today was like I can go to like +8 to -30 in a few days, so it's hard to like get out for a run or anything. And then it's also winter, so like I don't like exercising in winter, so doing some of that kind of exercise stuff.
You're biking inside then, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So me and my buddies are like trying to like. There's an app called Zwift, which is like you can like bike in a virtual world together. Yeah. So like we're really, really embracing the metaverse at this point.
Nice. That's awesome. And you've done projects on Strava stuff and running. I remember. So yeah, and I guess the other thing that we talked about at the beginning was like the escape room. You thought that was fun, so why not put it in a little box? So just tell me quickly about that, because I literally up here. I'll show you guys.
Show me.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
I almost just hit end. I'm pretty sure.
Blair Witch Project situation. Damn. Okay.
Up there, I have like a bunch of like Arduino and Raspberry Pi stuff, and one of my business ideas was like, can I make an escape room based off of these inside of like a van? Oh my God. Like a mobile escape room.
Oh my God. You're speaking my language now. Let me tell you about the box. Now, if my wife is listening, she's heard a lot about this, so she might want to tune off because I'm going to get real into it. Here we go.
All
so
right,
like, yeah, exactly. So like, you have a Raspberry Pi, and like, I was like, oh, like this is cool. For a while, I was like really interested in like how hardware worked, like, because like it's not anything I would never learn in school or whatever, but like hardware seems cool. Like I like solar panels. Maybe I can make the solar panels do something. That didn't work, whatever. So it's fine. But like I got the Raspberry Pi, and I was looking at like components you can buy. And like Raspberry Pi, if you don't know, it's like a tiny computer. It's like that big, and it's like $30-40 or something like that. Like to get the whole setup, including like everything set up, is like $80. So it's like pretty cheap. But then you can buy like components for it, like sensors for like dollars. Like you can get like a heat sensor or a light sensor for like almost like next to nothing. And then you just have to learn how to like put it together. So in the pursuit of that, I was like, how could I make something really neat? So I ended up fabricating this box made of wood. And I actually, on that Raspberry Pi, I made like a Flask I think it was like, yeah, some sort of Python like API, and I made a web page, and I also made it so when you boot on the Raspberry Pi, it makes its own Wi-Fi network. So in order to get into the box, there's like a QR code, so you have to unlock something, and then it exposes a wire that you have to plug in, and then it boots up the Raspberry Pi, and there's like a hint of like, go onto your own phone's Wi-Fi and look for this new network. You connect to that network, and if you go to like localhost 3030 or whatever, there's like a custom website that lives inside the box, and then there's like puzzles in there, and I put sensors in it, so like you had to like shake it to make the website update. You have to shake it 3 times, and then it would like do something like I would actually be transmitting a radio signal from the Raspberry Pi. So you had to physically get a radio and tune in. Then it had like Morse code. You had to type in a bunch of stuff. Oh man, it was really exciting. And then I think I broke it. Like I think I left it outside or something like that, and it got in the rain. So prototype 1 died. But from what I hear from you, prototype 2 is on the way, right?
Yeah, I got a lot of the components. You got a lot further than I did. So when are we forming the company, and when can people purchase in your nearest Walmart?
The Box LLC will be available in 2029. I know it's a bit far out, but the Kickstarter is beginning now, and we need $30 million.
Yeah, we're
not going to say where. Yeah. With every pre-order, you get an NFT, and that NFT.
I was about to say the same thing. You get one collectible, the Box NFT.
Exactly. Yeah, and then you can trade it in for nothing, I guess, but because the gas price will kill you.
You get the box now, and the Box NFT now, and you have to burn the NFT.
Oh yeah, or you have to buy the box, and then if you solve it, you get an NFT saying I completed the box. But then you have to burn the box, so you have to buy another box, right? So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you got to keep.
Like
it's a business model. You got to keep it. The money turning. So it'll be good.
That's true. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle /DataStuffPlus. Super fun to get to see your face, because I think we've had quite a few live people that are probably a lot of them from your Instagram, and they don't necessarily see your face, so I'm sure they had fun seeing your face. I know I had fun seeing your face.
I see a heart floating.
Lots of hearts flowing. Those who are watching on YouTube liked seeing your face, and those who are listening to the podcast just didn't get to see your face. So,
but they get to listen to sweet, sweet voice. Oh
yeah. That's true. So, okay. So where can people find more about you and your work? What are the best places?
Probably DataStuffPlus. Like honestly, my Medium stuff is like what I'm like most proud of, I guess. I have a LinkedIn as well if you want to see my professional career things. I have a TikTok. I don't really post on it much. It's got like, I posted one thing and it got like pretty high, but like it's going to be the same thing as the Instagram account, put it that way. But if you have TikTok and you like TikTok, you can look at that. And you can always message me, send me an email, whatever. Have any questions? Okay. I'm always open, to help people out. But yeah.
Sweet. That's awesome. We'll have your Medium and your Instagram definitely in the show notes down below, and definitely give both a follow if you're not already following. So yeah, man, thank you so much, and thanks for joining, and we'll have you on another show some other time.
That is today's interview. Thank you so much, Kyle, for joining us and telling us about data science projects and your data experience. That was really awesome. Thank you for all those who are listening and watching. Really appreciate it. And if you really found this podcast helpful, I would love if you left a rating and a review. It helps other aspiring data professionals to find this podcast and also supports the podcast from happening every week. I'll catch you guys in future episodes. And once again, definitely check out those show notes down below to find Kyle's Medium, as well as his Instagram, as well as the free data roadmap PDF and 21 days to data challenge that is coming up soon. Peace, everyone. Have a good day.